Imagine if you could easily find solutions to make your region or city smarter, greener, better connected, more social, and closer to citizens. The Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform can help you access knowledge about the latest policy trends, discover expert-validated good practices from all over Europe, find solutions in our peer review, get tailored support from our expert team. We can connect you with the right people and organizations. Together, we will find ways to solve your region's or city's challenges. Start your policy learning journey today.
Good morning, dear participants, and welcome to this webinar organized by the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform on the topic of rural innovation ecosystems. My name is Laura Varisco, and I'm one of the thematic experts from the Smarter Europe team of the Policy Learning Platform. And it's a pleasure for me today to guide you through this very engaging webinar. And I'm not alone today, so it's a pleasure to introduce my dear colleague, Marc Pattinson. Hello, Marc.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Laura. Delighted to be here with you. I think we often consider rural areas as being the oral partner of urban. And today we're going to try and change that perspective and listen to some great speakers, but also listen to you as a participant. So I'm looking forward to this discussion, Laura.
Thank you very much, Marc. And Vladimir, our communication manager, who will introduce some of the house rules for today.
Good morning, Laura. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to everyone. Indeed, as Laura just said, some quick house rules about today's webinar. So you will be able to ask your questions to our panelists via the chat box, which you can find below as an icon. And the experts, namely Laura and Marc, will raise them to the panelists then after their presentations. So feel free to ask them during the panelists' presentations. Also, just to inform you that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared afterwards with you.
Thank you very much. And so just I would like to check if you had a good coffee this morning. So I would like to launch a very short poll to stretch our legs a little bit. And please, Vladimir, you can launch the poll to get to know where the participants are from. Okay, so the main question is actually, are you from a rural region? Yes or no? And please reply to the poll. And after, do not hesitate to write in the chat the name of your region and especially the challenges that you are facing dealing with innovation. Thank you. Now maybe we can see the results.
Oh, we have we actually have, I'll put the results in the chat box. We have 41% of the respondents that said yes and 59 that said no.
Oh, okay. Very, very interesting. So we can see that it's a topic that not only it's not only for interested for rural regions, but also other regions. I think we will have a very nice roundtable discussion afterwards. And so I'm very pleased to welcome our speakers. So also, dear participants, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to them. We have Simone Sasso from the Joint Research Center. Good morning, Simone. How are you today? Ready?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, everyone, for the invitation.
Thank you. And then we go to Portugal. We have Marco Alves from the Tagus Valley. Good morning, Marco.
Good morning, Laura. Thank you for the invitation to speak today.
Thank you very much. And then we go north to Norway with Ingjerd from the Fosshaugane Campus that I'm sure I'm not pronouncing well. So maybe you can pronounce it correctly. Hello, Ingjerd.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. It's Fosshaugane Campus, but that's okay. It's we understand.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a short introduction of the Interreg Europe and the policy learning platform. I know that most of you are familiar with the program, but I also know that maybe some of you are from the new countries or are new partners of our projects. So just a reminder of what the Interreg program is a program which deals with interregional collaboration, and it covers all the regions in Europe with 36 countries involved and 7 new countries that joined the program recently. The main objective is to improve regional development policy instruments. So the program is primarily dedicated to policy makers, and the main focus is the exchange of experience. We cover all the 6 topics of the cohesion policy, and the program has 2 strengths. The first one is dedicated to projects. So we fund interregional cooperation project, and just a reminder for maybe future project partners that the 3rd call is closing on the 7th of June. And then the second strand is the policy learning platform, which is not only an online platform, but also a platform of people. And you can see Marc and I and Vladimir are here. So we are part of this live platform. And you can see we have 3 main priorities. We help people meeting each other through online webinars like this one, but also on-site workshops. And I know that, for instance, Simone yesterday was in Burgos in one of our social team colleagues' workshop on the topic of rural entrepreneurship. And we also have a knowledge database of policy solutions, especially good practice. And last but not least, we offer tailor-made expert support. And just a short focus on this top service. We organize on-site peer reviews. We have implemented 74 peer reviews since 2019 and 12 still on the pipeline. And as you can see on the map, we covered mostly every region in Europe, and you can certainly find your region in it, and maybe also some rural regions in it. And we also organize matchmaking sessions, both online and on site. And the main objective is to make this interregional collaboration very concrete through the exchange of experience and peer learning. And of course, you can also apply to benefit from our expert support, sending your requests through our website. Just some examples of our materials and services that you can find on our website. As I said, we have a very huge database of good practices coming from all over Europe and from all the Interreg Europe projects. We draft policy briefs on very trendy topics, and also you can see we drafted one on the topic of rural innovation, and one of the example of the peer review. But actually, we also had a peer review with our speaker Ingjerd in her region, and I'm sure that Ingjerd will tell us a little bit of this experience later during her presentation. Okay, so thank you very much. And now we can dive a little bit deeper into the topic of our discussion, and I'm leaving the floor to my colleague, Marc. Thank you very much, and enjoy our webinar.
Thank you. If you can just, this slide is trying to summarize some of the key words and issues that we think are interesting for you to address in some of the questions that you may have to the speakers. As Laura said and Vladimir said, if you've got questions, put them in the chat, in particular, looking at what are the challenges that you particularly see as being important in your rural innovation ecosystem. The word ecosystem is a term now that's being used, and we add it to anything we want to try and demonstrate that there's interactions between different actors, interactions between different thematics. But in the biological sense, ecosystems are both complex and living. And I think this notion of how an ecosystem works is very relevant for rural innovation ecosystems, because of the, let's say, the low density of actors you can sometimes find in metropolitan areas, which require greater interactions, greater synergies, greater cooperation. And I think the notion of cohesion lies at the heart of the Interreg Europe policy framework and cohesion policy in general. And rural areas, simply by the volume, whether it's square kilometers or hectares or whatever in your region, but at the European level, we have this population urban and we have rural areas, which, as you see in the second bullet point, are evolving in terms of the interactions they have with their urban hinterland. The COVID scenarios are the most recent indications of the role rural areas could play to relieve and reduce some of the human and societal stresses caused by such pandemics. So the notions of urban-rural, the divide and the boundaries are certainly not fixed. And in terms of our particular perspective, as Laura said, we've done a lot of work with you as a community, because we never work without you. And this is a good example, because the speakers we bring are from our community. And so we try and help shape new policy exchanges that you may be delivering, but also putting in place new policy changes that adapt to the societal, economic, and the more generic needs, whether it's public services, health, education, etc. Just one aside, at the moment, we're coming towards the end of the Belgian presidency. And for the last 2 days, I was in Belgium with a presidency event on health and personalized medicine. And we see how the access to data, whether it's on a shared protected vault or whether it's simply accessing remote healthcare through apps and through things, are leading to major benefits, but also challenges in terms of the way in which we access services which traditionally have been on a face-to-face. So these are some of the themes that we think are relevant today. The speakers will deal with them in much more detail and much better, but have a look at the benefits and challenges we've highlighted on this slide. And if you think they're relevant, highlight which ones might be the top topic for you in your rural region or even in your urban region. As we see, we have a mixed group of people today. So if, for example, you see the brain drain, the skills, talent retention as a real hot topic, please share that with your regional perspective. That would be great. So that's enough from me for the time being. We're now going to go into the heart of this webinar, and we're going to take you through the presentation. So I think, Laura, you're in charge of the slideshow for enabling Simone from the Joint Research Centre. And it's always a pleasure to have representatives of the JRC, because they really do bring us cutting-edge research and insights that as poor policy learning platform people, we learn a lot from these exchanges as well. So Simone, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Laura, and everyone that is online. I'm very happy that so many of us are joining this discussion. Indeed, my name is Simone Sasso. I'm working for the European Commission Joint Research Center. I don't know if all of you know what the JRC, the Joint Research Center, is. Just a couple of words. We are the internal scientific service of the European Commission. We are a DG, a Directorate General, which provides knowledge, expertise, develops studies, develops new data to inform policy making at the European level. So we inform all the other Directorate Generals. I'm working particularly in the territorial development unit. Therefore, what we do are studies, data, etc., to inform policy making that has the key objective to leave no one and no place behind. Today, next slide, please. I'll present you our activities and our line of work on innovation and entrepreneurship in rural areas. Next. So just a couple of words on why this is relevant. The reason, well, is pretty straightforward and probably is very clear to many of you that are here today. European rural areas represent, as you can see from the map, they are the areas that are colored in green. They represent the majority of the European territory. Depending on the definition that we use of rural areas, they cover between 76 to over 80% of the European territory, and they are home to over a quarter of the population. So again, depending on the definition that we are using of rural areas, they vary between 25 and 30% of the population. So it's quite clear that it's important to take a closer look at how innovation occurs in these territories, and especially at how we might encourage it. Another reason is that in recent years we have been seeing widening gaps between rural and urban areas, both in terms of productivity, of wages, of job creation, etc. As well, we are observing all over Europe concerning demographic trends that indeed threaten the resilience of these territories, and these mainly are due to depopulation and aging population. Innovation indeed can be a key factor to mitigate these gaps and prevent rural areas to enter into the so-called development traps, meaning prolonged economic stagnation in terms of exactly productivity, wages, and employment. And also it can be very important to address what we call the geography of discontent. So the fact that, as pointed out from various studies, and indeed this is very relevant considering the election that are coming in a few days, rural areas indeed show quite some high Eurosceptic voting. Next. Looking at now putting back the researcher hat and looking at the literature of the geography of innovation, we have been observing changing narratives on innovation in rural and in peripheral region. And we can here to make it to maybe a bit simplification, identify three main stages. The first one that here in the slide we call the no innovation. In this narrative, peripheral regions are not considered a location where innovation is indeed likely to occur, given the fact that they have quite some disadvantages due to the fact that indeed they are remote. So here we are talking about the core periphery model, meaning that innovation is mainly happening in the core, in the urban center, and perhaps by chance can spill over to peripheries. But we are stressing the fact that diversity, which is indeed a key component of city, and it's very important for innovation, is present in city, is absent in rural areas, therefore, there is this missing ingredients for innovation. This also happens because peripheries suffer from organizational and institutional thinness. In the second narrative that appears a few years ago, that we called innovation despite, it is recognized indeed that some forms of innovation may take place in rural areas, but this is mainly seen as a spillover, meaning rural firms are highly dependent on inputs from urban areas. A classic example is a large enterprise which is headquartered in urban areas and which establishes a unit in a rural area because it wants to access local inputs, local knowledge, etc. And then these firms can spill some innovation over these rural areas. This narrative indeed stresses the idea that in rural areas innovation only occur under certain conditions. It emphasizes that it's important to have absorptive capacity, it's important to have external connection, and this perspective also identifies innovation processes as characterized by slow innovation in rural areas, which relies indeed on local contextual factors. And finally, in more recent narrative that here we call it innovation because rural areas are indeed seen as spaces of opportunity, which have a comparative advantage for specific types of innovation, given the fact that they are indeed unique, that they have they are unique in terms of local knowledge and on the possibility that they can allow to have more experimental approaches because, among other reasons, for instance, there is a higher dominance of incumbents and a lower risk of intellectual property leaks. Next. The European Commission in recent years has recognized the importance of rural innovation, and this is reflected in two key strategic documents that I included in this slide. The first one is the long-term vision for European rural areas, which was launched 3 years ago in June 2021. And it includes several areas of action to make rural areas stronger, better connected, more resilient, and more prosperous by 2040. In the long-term vision for European rural areas, we also see a specific flagship action on research and innovation for rural community, which acknowledges the role that innovation can play to revitalize rural areas and indeed transform them into places of opportunity. The following year, the European Commission also launched the new European Innovation Agenda. That is, again, a strategic document which foresees a broad set of action that aim to position Europe at the forefront of this new wave of deep tech innovation. And the idea is to bring together policies, investments, and instruments in an integrated way to drive systemic change. The new European Innovation Agenda includes a flagship action on that aims to address the territorial innovation divide that exists within territories of the European Union. A key initiative that is formally part of these two strategic documents is the Startup Village Forum initiative that I'm going to present to you today. Next. So what is the Startup Village Forum initiative? It's coordinated by us, by the Joint Research Center. The initiative seeks, as we are a research center, to develop new studies, new evidence, and a deeper understanding on the factors that drive innovation and entrepreneurship in rural areas. As the word itself says, it is a forum, so it's a space open and inclusive for rural stakeholders for sharing and learning from each other. And the key idea is indeed for us to develop studies, to inform policy making, to design policy that allow to strengthen territorial innovation ecosystem and contribute to the acceleration of the spread and the adoption of innovation in rural areas. Next. So first of all, what is a startup village? As we define it, here is the definition that we put forward in a concept paper we published last year. As we define it, startup village is a place or a network of small places that embraces innovation and ambitious entrepreneurship as a way to unlock development potential and support well-being in rural areas. And here we put the key ingredient to reach this. It's local place, local people, and local purpose combined with external knowledge, external resources, and external markets. Here you understand already the key components of startup villages, which is combining locality, so the local assets, with connectivity. So the idea is to develop indeed places and development strategies that are yet place-based, so that they rely on the key assets of the place and defined in a participatory way by the key actors that live in these places, but they're not place-bound. They are not limited to these places. And indeed, the idea is to search for opportunity that exist beyond the village dimension. Next. So here we went on the conceptualization, and we have identified 5 building blocks that they are on one side innovation and entrepreneurship, and on the other side rural space and multiple scale. And I'm gonna briefly touch upon them. So innovation, well, as we know, it emerges through new combination of knowledge and resources. It is according to the classic Oslo definition, a new or improved products or process or a combination of them that differs significantly from previous products or processes produced or used by a certain firm, by a certain unit. Indeed, startup villages embrace the opportunities for rural entrepreneurs to participate into the transformation of sectors. Another key component there is entrepreneurship. We are talking about the relevance of promoting innovative businesses and startups. And we know that startups is not simply any businesses or any small businesses. Usually startups are characterized by age, by innovation activity, and by their aim to scale, by their ambition. So here, indeed, we are trying to put the attention on those businesses that have ambition to grow, and why we do that, even if we do believe that any kind of business, even the local bar, is fundamental to create a vibrant rural community. We think that if we want to transform and to give new opportunity to places, the idea is to promote those businesses that indeed have grow ambition and that they want to achieve markets and serve markets that go beyond the local one, meaning they try to insert territories, rural territories, into broader value chain. This can simply mean inserting them into regional value chain, national value chain, or perhaps global and international one. And then on the other side, when we look at the component of scale, well, we know that the village or the local scale is a fundamental scale for local action, for capacity building, etc. But as I mentioned before, we know that there are resources, there is knowledge, and there are market opportunities out there beyond the village and the local dimension. So this is what I just mentioned before. Startup villages are absolutely place-based, but they are not place-bound. And then when we look at space, here, of course, we are talking about rural space. We know that rural space presents many challenges, particularly for businesses and for innovation, such as size, distance, infrastructure. Marc, in his slide, pointed out a few of them. Very happy to discuss them after the presentation. The idea here is that rural areas indeed are very diverse. So when we talk about rural areas, we are talking about areas that are sometimes quite close to the city, sometimes are very remote, are mountainous area, and so forth. So startup villages indeed need to tailor support to activate potential, innovation potential that exists in the different rural communities. Next. As I was mentioning before, we have been working in the past months already to develop some research on rural innovation and entrepreneurship, and we have quite some new studies also coming up. In the next few months, we will be developing and conceptualizing first and developing later a new set of indicators that allows us to capture innovation in rural areas. Going a bit beyond the classic indicators of science, technology, and innovation that are used today, because if we, keep on using simply number of patents per inhabitants, of course we miss many aspects of the type of innovation that is indeed happening in rural areas. On the other hand, we are also running a series of empirical studies on the drivers and obstacles to rural innovation and rural entrepreneurship. Myself and other colleagues are currently developing an exploratory study that shows the geographical distribution of startups in European rural areas, and with economic complexity technique, we are trying to understand which is the relationship between the regional specialization, meaning the industrial and technological specialization of the region, and the kind of startups that emerge in the rural area of that region. Also, we have been conducting a set of analysis of good practices and initiatives, both public policies and private initiative, to strengthen the enabling factor for rural entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem. And we have one that will coming up soon in the next weeks, particularly on how to promote human capital for innovation and entrepreneurship in rural areas. And finally, also, we have been launching the Startup Village Mapping tool. Next, so I can describe a bit this exercise. This is a participatory exercise that is open to all European rural municipalities that consider innovation and entrepreneurship as important elements of their development strategy. The mapping function as a voluntary expression of interest of these villages on being involved in the discussion on rural innovation and entrepreneurship. This is a collaborative exercise where rural municipalities can share and learn from each other. There is, in this webpage, as you can see, a questionnaire and an interactive platform through which rural villages can provide information on their institutional and geographic characteristics, on the availability of enabling factors for innovation and entrepreneurship, and the degree of internal and external connectivity. As I mentioned before, connectivity is a very important component here when we talk about innovation ecosystem in rural areas. So once we receive this information, what we do is analyzing it. Next, we prepare a fact sheet, such as the one that we put on this slide. This is of an invented EU village, of course. This fact sheet provides information on the innovation ecosystem of the villages. Next, please. A couple of clicks. As you can see, you can visualize what is the availability of a key factor for innovation and entrepreneurship in rural areas. We understand what are the main economic sector of the village. We point out if there are existing programs that have been already launched for innovation, for promoting innovation and entrepreneurship in these villages. And finally, we produced, based on the information that the village provide, a heat map that shows the degree of connectivity that exists among actors in the innovation ecosystem. Finally, we also include information regarding the funding and the funds that the village has been using over these years to promote activities related to innovation and entrepreneurship. So the exercise is open to all rural municipalities that are happy to participate in this conversation. And so we welcome everyone to fill in the questionnaire, and of course happy to hear all the questions and join in the discussion in this webinar. Thank you very much.
Excellent introduction. Thank you, Simone. I took the liberty of following the link that our colleagues put in the chat, and I see that we've got some good European coverage. Portugal seems particularly active in this first phase. So I think we've got a couple of people from Portugal. So have a look yourselves, and you can see what your neighbours are maybe doing. And I think it's an excellent tool to give visibility, which is one of the key challenges for the rural innovation. I've got one simple question. Interreg Europe, we're often very interested in the interregional and the sort of cooperation across borders. Do you have any examples where villages might be in a cross-border scenario and they see innovation linkages perhaps working? You deal with that, I deal with that. The digital connections you highlighted in your fictitious village. We've got a number of digital and rural projects in the Interreg Europe project portfolio. I think of Carpe Diem, maybe Vladimir, you can put that in the link, where they talked about these hubs of digital connectivity. And you mentioned in your presentation nomad workers and attracting entrepreneurs. I think that's good. But on that question of network of villages in a cross-border, what do you think?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mark. This is a very relevant question. We do see already, luckily, example of cross-border collaboration happening, for instance, very often between Spain and Portugal. We have seen, indeed, Portugal has been very active, and some villages are doing an amazing, indeed, work in promoting innovation in rural areas. I'm thinking of the case of Fundao, for instance, that just in a matter of a few years managed to develop a full, really innovation ecosystem, digital innovation ecosystem in a very rural area. It includes, a set of initiative policies, private and private action that is quite impressive. So in a small rural town, we see a set of 25, 30 startups popping up, and a full set of support institutions. When it comes to interregional collaboration, indeed, as I said, we see collaboration happening already, for instance, between cross-border region of Spain, Portugal. We have also seen registered quite some collaboration and even joint strategies between Catalonia and France region. And one bit of research that colleagues of mine are developing in my unit is indeed the concept of functional rural areas, which is related. Happy to discuss about this later if we have time or via separate meeting. That indeed goes beyond the administrative borders and looks at region and at areas that indeed share some services. Because when we are talking about rural area, the key important factor is access to services. This can be, what we call here enabling factor for innovation. Some of them are, of course, factors that are pretty connected to the startup, the innovation world, such as, incubation services, Fab Lab, etc., acceleration services. But many other are basic services that are, of course, fundamental also for innovation and for startups. So access to health, access to schooling, all these things is very important. So we put forward very recently a publication that explained this new concept of functional rural areas, and we hope that indeed the policy will pick up on this concept and actually will go beyond the border and will look more at the functionality of the area, not at the administrative.
Okay. One of our participants, Christine Clever, has put a question which I think we'll take to the panel, but you just picked up on that point, how rural areas that have a different networking capacity because of the diffuse nature of the either the participants in networks or the institutions necessary. So I think firstly, thanks to Christine, and we'll pick it up with the panel with all three speakers.
Yeah,
now we'll move.
This I think it's again like a fundamental point of the innovation
Indeed.
ecosystem in rural area. Like the aspect that when we think about innovation ecosystem, usually all the actors are within the perimeter of a region. If we are talking about regional innovation ecosystem, when we talk about rural areas, we have to go beyond. So I try to stress this this aspect of connectivity, and I'm happy that this is shared by the community as well.
And I would like also to stress and pinpoint one of the key messages that you presented, and it was really inspiring for me because I didn't know about it. You said that innovation is place-based, but not place-bound. So this concept of not having boundaries also reminded me of some exercises, peer review exercises and experiences we had, especially in Sweden, you know, Marc, of cross-regional cooperation, finding resources in cross-border regions, and also, of course, interregional cooperation. So thank you for this message, place-based but not place-bound. I think it's quite inspiring for all of us. And yes, okay, so maybe we can leave the floor to our speaker from Portugal, Marco Alves. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Also, thank you, Simone. Your presentation was very inspiring. I don't know if our municipality is already aware of the Startup Village program, but I make sure that if they are not, they will be, because I think we also have some characteristics that fit the concept. So regarding the previous presentation that Marc has performed in the beginning, and now Simone, I will take the liberty to let me just okay. Now you see the presentation, right? Yeah. So I'll have I want to share a little bit more about the context of Tagus Valley than I initially was thinking of, but I think you will understand why. So Tagus Valley is a science and technology park, and we are placed right in the middle of Portugal, in a low density population area, also a rural area, and we divide our activity in 4 main areas. One of the areas that we call Inov Point is dedicated to entrepreneurship and business promoting activities. We have a business incubator. Today we have 67 companies that are incubated in this structure. Then we have 2 applied research labs that are in Linea and Align.ipt, each one dedicated to different areas. In Linea, which I am the responsible of, is dedicated to the agri-food sector. I will detail more on that later, because that's the main focus of our intervention here today. The Line.ipt lab is dedicated to Industry 4.0 especially. And then we have also InnovCode. InnovCode is a team that is dedicated to promoting digital literacy, and also circular economy concepts in schools. So our colleagues give weekly classes of 1 hour to kids from the 3rd grade up to the 8th grade in coding from one side, and also in circular economy. So we, as you can see, have an activity that tries to tackle all the challenges, or most of the challenges that Marc presented earlier, namely resources, brain drain, etc. Because with these activities, we can also not only retain talent, but also in our department, as we will see, is an example of that. We can also attract talent to a region that is gapping in that area. So going in the topic of the agri-food unit. we work mainly in food, but also, and correlating with the other aspects of Tagus Valley, with the circular economy and bioeconomy teams, especially in the overlapping zone that they have with the food sector. In a very generic way, we usually develop our activity in two main directions, through services direct to the companies, like new product development, legal and technical support, and the Food Fab Lab. That is the concept that I will explain better further ahead. But we also work, and our main work is in applied research. And this means that we are always looking for funding for national and international funding for projects that can be individual projects of our own, where we develop our innovation agenda, and especially projects that we develop with other partners. The way that we characterize ourselves, and this is also something that I can enhance further ahead, but it's like we are the industry for the universities. So where universities can enhance the TRL levels from the innovation they are performing in their labs, but we also some kind of lab for the industry, because we can be a place where industries can make tests at industrial relevant scale, but with other controlled conditions that they can have conclusions and have less investment, and especially because they do not need to stop their production lines. So as a conclusion about our activity, we characterize ourselves as specialists in the pilot scale and industrial scale for TRLs 5 to 9. I'll explain better further ahead also why we call it, we say we can go up to TRL 9. And also that we are a place that we are the only place in Portugal that has a broad range of innovative and emerging preservation and process technologies. I will say a few words that probably for most of you don't mean much, but we have ohmic heating, we have high pressure processing, ultrasounds, pulse electric fields, among all the conventional technology that you need to prepare juices, pulps, concentrates, meat products, etc. And one point that is very relevant to enhance here at this stage of the presentation is that because we have all that type of technology, and because we are not also specialists in that in all the technologies, we are very competent using and applying them. But of course, we need the support of the universities that for 10, 20, or even more years ago are developing the knowledge that is basilar to those technologies. So we are connected to them, and we have close connections. We develop projects together, and so we are not only able to have an impact in at the local level, considering only our know-how, but we can also bring the know-how that is dispersed all over the country here in Portugal to have an impact here through these connections. I believe this is a very important aspect. So the Food Fab Lab. What is the Food Fab Lab? Basically, the Food Fab Lab, as the name implies, is a service that allows for companies, for entrepreneurs, for universities also to have access to a place where they can experiment technologies, they can validate processes, and they can even take classes for practical classes for students in an industrial environment, but without all the limitations that they would have if they went to a factory that is performing. They can operate the machines, they can ask questions, we can stop in the middle and talk about some technical aspect. But the relevance here is that they can not only test it, but as we have capacitate our infrastructure with an industrial licensing, they can also, companies can also make small production batches. This can be important for startups that sometimes don't have the money already or the funding to have this infrastructure of their own. So they can use our facilities at a very reduced cost comparing to the investment in the individual facilities. So they can use our facilities, test the market, and if things don't go well, they will have a much better situation than if they have another type of investment that is of a bigger scale, and then when things don't go well, it's really a problem. So we can support startups, but also SMEs. Sometimes SMEs want to try a small, want to make a small market test, but the smaller machine that they have or production line only allows to make 10,000 units, but they only want to make 500, 1,000. So they can also come to our facility and perform that production here. As you can see, this data is pre-COVID, but I can say that today we are receiving about 2 to 3 clients per month, and that we consider it's almost half of our full capacity. And for us, this is very interesting because we have been watching, and especially after the COVID period, we have been seeing an increased rate of usage of our facilities, and we are going fast into the direction that we are in the full capacity. I don't know if 5 or 6 clients for you during a month, perhaps it seems strange to me to say that this full capacity, but some clients use the facilities for more than 1 day. We also need time to prepare the facilities from client to client. And of course, we also need time to perform our applied research projects. So this is, we have to balance all these aspects. So what can we share as recommendations for or from our experience to anyone that is thinking of developing something similar to our food fab lab? The stakeholder involvement in all stages is crucial. This was something that we learned along the way. So if you can learn anything from us, this is a very important message. Especially agri-food companies, not only the bigger players in the region, but also the associations that represent more companies. Their input is very relevant. Also, since this usually has a legal framework that sometimes is very sensitive due to be the food sector, it's very good to involve all the legal and fiscal entities right from the beginning, so they can help you to design the service, to design the facilities the best way possible, considering that we want to serve as many customers as possible. Also, local authorities, of course, and the technical team that will support our service. As you can see, we are 6 people. Of course, we cannot be specialists in all the technologies, but we are very good at bringing our partners that are the specialists on board with our projects. Then we also have to take a territorial approach to the way that we design the food fab lab. When you design such a facility, you need to consider at least 2 dimensions when you think about the equipment that you will acquire for the facility. You will have to think what kind of innovation do you want to pursue, if that is an objective. For instance, we specialize ourselves, as I said in the beginning, in the emerging technologies for processing and preservation. This was almost 20 years ago, the decision. But you will also need to take in account what would be the expectation regarding the most proeminent food resources that you expect for people to want to transform. This is very shady information that you can gather, because it's not easy to have a precise expectation, but there are usually some indications if you take in account the most important and relevant resources that you have in your region. For our region, we are talking about fig, arbutus, quince, wine, olive oil also. And today, not only at a regional level, but also at a national level, we are seeing a lot of plant-based products that companies and startups want to develop. So we are also specializing ourselves in that area, acquiring some new equipment to go with that trend. So as a main takeaway message, we have Food Fab Lab is a shared productive unit, and we try to contribute for the economic development through the knowledge transfer and new products development, and also with the circular economy approach, because we also have a very strong focus on the byproducts, and not only to diminish the production of byproducts, but also to reuse them as ingredients and sometimes as added value ingredients in the food products that we develop. So thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Personally, I'm feeling very hungry after watching your slides, but I hope that that's not intended. I think there's a couple of interesting points that would be just useful to dwell on for a few minutes now. The question of creating this sort of knowledge hub and center of excellence. You talked about the investment support in the partnership. You mentioned, a food cluster, which gives you, as we all know, the sort of quadruple helix actors. But one of the issues that was on one of our slides, Simone mentioned it, it's the skills attraction, but also the retention. When you've invested in your incubated companies, I think I noted 67 incubees. What's the sort of a challenge for them on their next stage of growth? Because clearly you want to, you've invested, you want them to stay in the local area and then invest and attract other staff, hopefully. Have you had any particular challenge on that sort of growing the centers of knowledge and excellence around the incubated companies?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'll divide my answer into parts, because the 67 companies are not only from the food sector, they are from all the sectors. And so the challenges that they face are very different. But I would say that along the time, because the incubator also is 15 years old, more or less, what we see is that the businesses that are incubated here are more and more resilient. So today we have a little rate that is for the businesses that is smaller than in the beginning. So I would also be available to share some conclusions after the session with the manager of the business incubator, because my colleague will for sure have more details regarding that area. But I would say that we became better at analyzing the problems that they have regarding access to funding, mentoring, partners also, and that we could help them better to tackle those challenges. Regarding the food sector, the second part of the answer, I believe that the main change that occurred in the last decade was that, let me put it in another way, and then I will go to the challenges that they currently face. But 10 years ago, when I made the presentation very similar to this one that I made, most of people did not understood what I was talking about. What is this kind of thing that we can go there and use to production, a shared productive unit? What is all this about? So we're like preaching in the desert, is what we used to say. Today, people will look out for us and reach out to us, knowing that they are looking for a place like the one that we have. So this was a big change in the last decade. And this also, I think that is a sign that startups and companies were not really aware, usually were not really aware of the challenges that they have, because they did not know the solutions that they needed. So that's a sign that you don't know the problem that you have. And today they are more prepared and more efficient in identifying those challenges. So this also contributes for not only the number of clients that we have, but also for that the clients that we have are more structured. Even if it's a startup that is beginning in the beginning of their journey, they usually seem to us more structured than a client that would work for us during a year, but the things will always look like a little bit sloppy. No, not today. Today, everyone is more focused and more aware of the challenge that they have.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think the food sector is one of those sectors that appears in a great number of rural economies. So I think your insights are very relevant, and your specificity, which is also this national perspective. I like that map you showed us, is also one of the, let's say, opportunities when you have this center of excellence. You can actually share the knowledge and offer services at a much bigger scale than many other similar sectors. We can talk about some of the trends affecting food later in the general discussion, but for now, thank you, Marco. We will now move to Ingjerd in Vestland County, going from Portugal to Norway. And I'm particularly keen listen to this project because we're going to showcase, or Ingjerd's going to showcase P. Iris, and some of you know Iris is the name of my favorite dog. So this is my favorite project, Ingjerd. So over to you.
I'm going to present the Tech Hub Fosshaugane Campus, and it's in a way it's the history of how an innovation ecosystem was established in many ways. And the presentations earlier today ring a lot of bells of good points to take with us further on in our work here in Vestland. P. Iris was a project that ran from 2017 to 2022, first as a core project with a follow-up, and then later a one-year corona effect study. P. Iris was about improving policies for rural area innovation systems, and in particular innovation networks, and the role of innovation networks in the rural innovation system. P. Iris identified 7 important messages to policymakers based on the exchange in the project, and you can see them here. And all of them are important for the innovation system, but maybe particular the 4 last ones, connecting rural innovation networks with the outside world, and a holistic support system, which means the public sector's role, private sector's role in this, and then the development of skills in innovation network management. And also having a proactive public sector, because rural areas are more thin with regard to resources, companies are smaller, so they aren't as much able to participate in the same way as maybe larger companies in urban areas. P. Iris had a large effect on our regional plan, which was developed parallel to the end of P. Iris, and its current operation of the plan also. P. Iris were quite important, and in particular for the pink bulb here, innovative and inclusive society. So how can we bring this urban areas we have and get benefits from them also in the rural areas, and how can urban areas benefit from what is in the rural areas? Our region also had a peer review carried out in the fall 2020, which gave very important effect, both or in particular in the green business development part of our plan, but it also affects the other areas. And a number of green hubs have been defined, and they are located both in urban and rural areas, where they are trying to then grow this innovative practice. The history of Fosshaugane Campus and the Fosshaugane Tech Hub is started already back in the 1960s when the local football club in Sogndal started to climb in the series in the Norwegian football. It had a breaking point in 1996 and onwards when they decided to they needed to develop their arena more actively. We live in the west part of Norway. There are lots of rain, among other things. So the first step was to build an indoor football field for practice. But they also saw how can we utilize this for other purposes for the village. And it was the football club that sort of had the initiative in this. And there are three key elements from this case. And that is the way the football club chose their tenants, who should be tenants in the buildings that they built. It also has a key element of shared physical infrastructure between football education and businesses, because they are co-located in the facilities or in the neighboring facilities and within the facilities. And then it's cross-sectoral use of competence between the actors. So the network between the actors in the Fosshaugane campus. So I'm taking you to our fjords. This is along the Sognefjord and the inner part of Sognefjord where Tech Hub Fosshaugane exists. It's a network between technical startups. It's part of Fosshaugane Campus. The Tech Hub Fosshaugane is an informal network. It's not a formal network. But they have a high degree of knowledge, co-creation and sharing. In the case report, they say that they have difficulties in engaging with the research and development actors that is in the area. And they are using recruiting strategies, common recruiting strategies. One of the companies, Rocket Farm, they organize a Rocket Farm camp where they bring in young and newly educated people who could be interested for a summer camp. And they show them all the things that can be done, the fun parts about living in Sogndal. And let's see, yeah, Sogndal campus, the football club is the main actor here. And you have Rocket Farm down by the bridge across the fjord. We have an infrastructure where you have young technical startups. We have the facilities that the football club built up, and they invited and were part of making room for an incubator. They were part of making room for an first line service, and they're all co-located in the buildings that you saw in the last pictures. Next to the campus, or to Fosshaugane, is a college or Western Norway University of Applied Sciences. You have a small research institution, and you have the high schools and vocational universities all in the neighboring facilities. But these are what is local. We also need connection to outside. You need access to risk funding, and you need the public actors at the regional level who also are participating in funding and making resources available. One of the infrastructures that are drawing young people to this place, and I'll just switch over to a net page, is actually this picture is representing is skiing, and very short distance from the office to the skiing fields. It only takes 10 minutes to get there. And that was has been a selling point also when getting new young people in. There are also a lot of IT technology startups. Rocket Farm is doing robotics, and you have other kind of high-tech IT startups in this network. So we sort of are having a common community, and we're sharing and knowledge and co-creating are very natural. of course, there are also other startups here, but it has become a very vibrant area. And I think with regard to the first presentation today, this is a startup village. But it's also a lot of the companies sustain there. They don't move away. So it's not only a startup village, but it's a ground for creating new things. And several of the companies have started up, and then they spin off new ideas into new companies. So they sort of are doing it in a different way when what has traditionally been in this area before, where companies have new ideas, but they keep them within the company as opposed to starting up and new companies as spin-offs. In our work with the innovation ecosystem, we see that there is a combination of different tools and policies that can contribute to reducing obstacles and creating opportunities in the innovation ecosystems and for the startups. Research and education, having it close to, not physically close to necessarily, but close to and collaborating with these startups and environments, but also having public change forces, public organizations who are willing to invest in the ecosystem, who are making room for these facilities is important. Having the innovations hubs, such as the incubators, the business gardens, the shared office spaces, and so on, that is important. The network, not only within, but also outside to other parts of the country, to other parts of Europe, is important to get inspiration in, getting access to knowledge that can contribute to solving problems that are there, and where you can also yourself grow by sharing your knowledge. Having funding mechanisms is important, and one of the things we are working particularly on now is startup funding and or risk funding for startups. That's it hasn't been very easily accessible in our region, and then you have the innovation zones making room for these common places where they can meet, having these informal networks where they can share ideas. This is more of meeting places as opposed to formal places, but also public-private partnerships. Among other, the building of Fosshaugane Campus was a meeting place between the soccer team, the county municipality, county council, and the university college that is there, where everyone needed different kinds of premises, and by merging their needs, they managed to build and benefit from a combination of things. The football stadium don't need as much. They need the training facilities during the weeks. During the weekend, when there is a match, they need the meeting rooms to have for supporters and for providing things to those who pay more for the tickets. So it's sort of a combination of dealing with it, and also the soccer team having a large number of students passing through their area is also on marketing, and it shows them off. So everyone is benefiting, but in different ways, and they are having a joint a joint benefit. And sort of the circle here is not a very good one, because it's not linear. This isn't a linear process. This is definitely where you find how can you do this. You need to always find new ways around what is missing here. How can I combine different aspects to benefit my region. How can we contribute to developing our innovation ecosystems? Vestland County Council supports the development of the innovation ecosystems in Vestland, and we are having partnership agreement with a total of 36 organizations around our county. It's a quite big county, and we cannot be a part of every development around. So we need our good collaborators outside our organization to be able to create this ecosystem, both the rural and the urban ecosystems. But as a large rural area, the rural ecosystems have a particular focus in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingjerd, for giving us some insights into what's happening in Vestland. For those who don't know, it's quite close to the city of Bergen, and that was one of the sort of driving forces behind the policy learning platform peer review. We were looking at how we could create these synergies and connections that Ingjerd has so well summarized. But if we can ask the other two, I think Marco, you're on, and you can join us for the panel with Simone as well. Before we have a general panel discussion, I've got one question and comment for you, Ingjerd. I think you highlighted the importance of finding some key catalysts in the process, and whether the football club knew they were going to be a key catalyst when they started, maybe not, but in essence, they've become this cross-sectorial meeting point. I mean, we can throw our innovation vocabulary at them, but I think the interesting point I note is that by having this co-location and different users, you actually cross over different communities, different people with different needs, and who don't necessarily know what will come from these connections, but innovation often happens at this sort of a serendipitous moments of the football club becomes this sort of urban rural coffee machine where you meet different people. And I think that was fascinating to have that vision and say, okay, we're going to create this, let's make sure there's room for others and make sure the facility isn't just barbed wire closed until the football match. I think that's important. But the question I'd like to ask, it comes back to your PIRIS, your 7 policy messages, and it was a question that Christine Clever asked on our chat about connecting these networks and rural areas, sometimes by their scale and the sort of diffuse nature, would maybe lack critical mass. And you highlighted in your last line that 36 different organization networks. Are there any sort of success factors that are particularly relevant for connecting networks in a rural, let's say, location that you could share?
It's creating meeting places, and in a way, earlier distance was a factor. With COVID and more use of technological platforms for meeting has made it easier to start some of the interaction between the networks. But during PIRIS, they gathered several of these or representatives of these networks to throughout, and this learning factor, even if it was maybe just one person from a network that were in the common meetings, had an effect. They've got to know each other in a different way, and that's one of the things we are trying to foster now. But it's finding the common ground and defining what are the different issues that are there. That's and also some of them are so into developing their own region, so looking to others, but they need to look to others. They need to look for knowledge outside their own region, and so I think it's meeting places, either digital or physical or a combination of them, are core.
Okay.
And finding common ground.
Sorry.
Yeah, and finding common ground.
Marco, would you agree from that in your more focused sectoral approach? Ingjerd has just said.
Yes, I would agree, and also I would add that that we face two more challenges regarding this. That consist in one hand, you have to try to find ways to validate that you are reading the ecosystem well, because it's easy for you to identify or try to identify some innovation direction or trends, but that they are not aligned with the priorities that the companies have or the ecosystem has. And also, it's the other face of the coins in some ways that you have to try to make the advantages of the networking and also the usage of facilities like ours. They have to be easy recognizable for the companies. Sometimes and I speak for Tagus Valley, we understand that we are not successful, but we also know that it's not only a problem of ours. We have connections at the national and international level, that this is a common topic, that sometimes we cannot make the advantages of taking advantage of these resources, that we are not communicating in the best way. So these are the two main challenges I would add to this discussion from others' perspective.
And Simone, in your village mapping and sort of checklist of issues, what priority or emphasis do you give on this networking? Do you say, you have to have so many networks? So what's the sort of, is there an indicator, a KPI, or some way of measuring the dynamics of different networking and exchanges?
Yes, Marc, it's indeed the networking or connectivity component, as I mentioned before, is, I think, the key component of innovation ecosystem in rural areas. And I think here there are two challenges. One is, first of all, the first step that we need to do is to make rural actors understand what innovation is, because sometimes it's something that, they think AI, robotics, like something super complex in a way. Indeed, innovation can be complex, but also not. It involves, developing and adopting new products, new processes, not only developing, sometimes it's even just adopting and use these new solutions that are out there. There are solutions both, for products, but also for processes, new ways of organizing your business, etc. So that's the first part. Second part, I think, how to make happen this connection. Indeed, what Ingjerd was saying, what Marco was saying, by creating these spaces is fundamental. And it's also very important, to organize these also temporary events where basically we put in contact innovators that are based in rural areas, in urban areas, with actors that are in rural areas. Sometimes are people of the same sectors. Sometimes are knowledge providers or technology providers and so forth. So really like even having one workshop one day can really be changing the trajectory of the villages over the year, because it's enough just to connect with the right person, with the right firm to indeed adopt the technology and take a different path. So that's very important. Another way also to promote that is some policy tools, some policy instruments that already exist and that have been used elsewhere, not only in rural areas, such as, for instance, the innovation voucher, like little, grants that are given to firm to somehow like experiment innovation. So to finance some knowledge or some technology services and make this connection happen. So it's like what I say is like, inviting two people that you think they can get along very well, pay them the first dinner, because that's what the innovation voucher is. It's just a very small amount, but make this connection happen. And hopefully in many cases, the collaboration, let's say the relationship goes on over the year. So these tools are very important. When it comes to measuring, of course, it's quite challenging. In the mapping tool that I presented, it's a self-reporting information that we are asking villages. What we are trying to do in the coming months is to develop, in this case, an experimental firm level survey, where indeed we would like to ask firms how do they collaborate with a series of actors. And this probably is the, let's say, the golden standard to how to capture innovation, collaboration happening in rural areas. So far, the traditional ways and the survey that exists, such as the Community Innovation Survey, that is that all European countries are carrying out, does not capture enough rural firms. So we have it's not statistically representative of the rural world. So we now really try to put the light on the rural world and to understand a bit better how this works.
No, I mean, and Laura kindly showed the slide while you've been talking.
I allowed myself to go back to this slide because I think it gives a very comprehensive overview of all the topics that have been tackled today. So I think it's a good message a good takeaway to wrap up this webinar. And we saw like spaces, the presentation of spaces, the Fab Lab, the Tech Hub, the scaling opportunity from the presentation of the two good practices. So we see how also the theory connects to the practicalities. So maybe some insights from you speakers to wrap up this webinar, some key messages.
Yeah, final statement of your vision of rural innovation ecosystems. Ingjerd, you go first because you're the last speaker. You can go first.
Yeah, I think I will emphasize the seventh message of P. Iris, which was the importance of the public sector. So proactive public sector, because in rural areas, if we think triple helix or quadruple helix, whatever, businesses are small. The circle for business, normally we represent a triple helix as 3 equal circles, but in a rural triple helix, the business circle is small because the companies are usually smaller and have less resources. Research and development is usually smaller because they're either distant, or if they are local, then they are not necessarily the big universities with different kind of skills. And then you have a public sector. They need to take a more proactive role, step in and make room for the others to play a round in, or their role in the triple helix to facilitate things more than what they've done. That doesn't necessarily mean funding, but it can mean human resources that are developing the region. Yeah.
Now, in fact, your number 7 was going to be my next question if nobody else had any questions. So I think we're on the same wavelength there, Ingjerd. That's good. Marco, what would your final message to our?
Yeah, I would follow the lead of Ingjerd regarding, I believe, regarding the ecosystem, because the message of Ingjerd, or one of the parts of Ingrid's message, I believe it's directed to make the ecosystem more efficient. I believe that this is the main objective, and so also adding our experience, I would say that we have to make a constant effort of always looking for the ecosystem as a whole. This slide, I believe, is very good. This one, because sometimes it's easy for falling in the trap that to look only to some dimensions of the ecosystem while leaving others out. And we must have the effort to consider the ecosystem as a whole and try to find tools that improve the functioning of the ecosystems.
I think you're right. The critical mass is achieved by the combination of these factors. You're not having the company or one research facility that's driving a whole economy. That's, I think, these elements. work together, and in theory the 2 + 2 becomes 5 and 6 because you've got the independency of benefits from everyone. Okay, Simone, what's your final message you'd like to share?
I will insist again on the key concept that I tried to pass all over the presentation, and I'm very happy that it's been picked by everyone about connectivity. So it's all about making connection happen, and indeed I think this slide summarize a bit the concept of ecosystem. Ecosystem, as Marc, as you said, indeed are dynamic networks, are dynamic set of connections at the end of interdependent actors that, and the set of what we call enabling, facilitating factor that supports entrepreneurship and innovation. So ecosystem indeed are those that provide the enabling condition to nurture, create, develop, and hopefully scale the idea. And that's why we place the concept of ecosystem at the center of this conceptual map. It's a building block that is indeed the result of all the other building block. So indeed, I think when we talk about rural innovation ecosystem, the connectivity component is fundamental. And connectivity, so locality, of course, we are talking about using the resources that are there, maximizing and tapping into the opportunities that are there, listening to the local actors. So what I was saying before with the place-based approach, but indeed like connecting this to all the other opportunities that are out, and to tapping into the resources and the knowledge that is available in other contexts. This is valid, of course, for many territories, but especially for rural areas. It's fundamental to create this connectivity.
Simone, you've almost summed up perfectly what the policy learning platform tries to do, because we try and act as these enablers. We bring people such as the three of you who have knowledge and experience. And I think that's important, that it doesn't remain in your head, in your office, in your team, but it's shared. So that's we're very happy to hear that. And next week, Laura and I were in Vilnius looking at the digital transformation that is happening in public sector, GovTech, and we'll be working with DG Digit and sharing in a 2-day workshop some of the new insights from the European Interoperability Act, etc. But I think it also, one of the participants kindly shared a link, and you should have a look before we cut off, of a Horizon Europe project, which isn't renowned for looking at rural issues, but those of you know Horizon Europe, we have a third pillar that's now has the words European Innovation Ecosystems. So the word rural is missing, but this notion of ecosystem is coming into Horizon Europe. So we shouldn't feel alone in our regional development policy and cohesion policies. We can see how there are the linkages. And I think, taking that knowledge you've just highlighted, Simone, is a good way in which we can perhaps conclude, because Laura's going to shout at me. We're going to have a 11:30. But on my behalf, I'd just like to thank the three of you and also thank the participants who joined us. And I will leave the final word to Laura, who can wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marc, for helping me moderating this webinar. A lot of interesting insights and perspectives. Thank you, Simone, for sharing your experience from your research work at the Joint Research Center. And thank you, Marco and Ingjerd, for presenting your good practices. And I saw some comments in the chat that some of the participants found out some similarities to their experience, to the challenges they are facing in their region. So once again, another interregional cooperation work and sharing good practices and helping each region to get inspirations from other experiences. Thank you very much, and do not hesitate to fill in the survey that will pop up just immediately after the webinar closes, and follow our next events, webinars, and workshops on the link
we'll be
that
sharing
Vladimir shared.
all the we'll be sharing all
And
the
yeah, we'll be
presentations.
sharing a follow-up article with the recording and the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, speakers, and thank you, participants. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice
much.
day. Bye.